I had so much emotional pain inside of me that, you know, I was a very sincere Christian, but because I had so much emotional pain, I didn't know how to not be irritated and agitated and frustrated. You know, I would hear pastors say, you need to have a relationship with Jesus. You need to have an experience with Jesus. You need to be closer to Jesus. I'm like, well, how do you do that when you have all of this baggage and all of this pain? And that is what inhibits you from being able to have the Christ-like character.
This month, we're talking a lot about the fact that people delete themselves from life. And let the hearer understand what I'm saying here. This month is dedicated to that scenario. So do you have any statistics on that?
Well, yes, I do actually. Deleting yourself, it is so weird for me to say it in that way, is the 12th leading cause of death in the U.S. Wow. So that's one. I have a few. Males die by deleting themselves. They're 3.8 times more likely to die by deleting themselves than women. On average, there are about 132 deaths per day by people who delete themselves. And white males actually are accounted for 7 out of 10 of those.
Wow, 70%.
Yeah. I don't know why that is. When I was looking at my statistics, I really didn't understand why white males are more likely. Maybe it's because of all the pressure from, I don't really know why.
Maybe we're a majority, so maybe that's just the cause. Or...
Well, it could be that being the majority. It also could be being in a capitalistic society, and the white male dominance is more glorified in some ways. I mean, they tend to get ahead, be more successful. They have maybe more they have to carry. I'm not really sure.
So as a mental health therapist, what do you think the reason why men in general do this than women?
Well, I would say because men are more left brain oriented, meaning that they don't sit and with their emotion, they don't process their emotion a lot. Sometimes, I'm not saying all men, but generally speaking, men don't even really know why they're feeling what they're feeling. So as a result, a lot of things can get bottled up inside. Men don't typically want to seek therapy. Counseling is very important. If you don't have somebody to talk to, you need to talk to somebody. So a lot of men don't see the need for a therapist. They tend to engulf themselves in work, and they allow that to be their therapy, which we know that doesn't really work.
Right.
And so it's more the left brain oriented. Right brain is more where the holistic feeling emotional side is. It's not so much in the left brain. And so
a lot of us are dealing with a lot of hardships in our life, but a woman is more likely to seek out therapy and get it off her chest and get some feedback, whereas a man, he's just like, no, I'm going to work through it, and they eventually just bottle up so they can't take it anymore. Right.
On average, women speak about 50,000 words a day. Men speak about 10,000.
Wow.
If that.
You know, I think it's interesting. I saw a Jubilee video, and I don't like watching Jubilee videos because they're a mess. But one of the things that they showed was a statistic that said that when men have bottled up this emotion, and primarily men that bottle up this emotion, they have done that primarily because while they were dating someone, and this was an amazing statistic to me. While they were dating someone in their teenage years, they had a female partner that when they opened themselves up to, canceled them because they felt that they were weaker, and so they've restricted this in their heart, maybe even canceled their own ideas of it, and made it so that when they didn't feel like they were enough of a man at that point.
Wow.
And so to become more of a man, or what society thinks are a man, they hide their feelings. I thought that was fascinating.
Well, it just brings to light how much of an influence a woman is in helping a man to be able to hit the top of his ladder and to be able to be successful. Men in their own merit generally Yeah, say general, because then I get, folks be upset thinking I'm saying all men. There are some men who are able to identify with their emotions. Most men don't. Generally, they don't. But generally, men find success in their achievements. Yeah. And if they have not been nurtured emotionally, that their achievements are what will drive them. And so a woman, a good woman, a healed woman, an emotionally secure woman, can help them to be able to identify with their emotional side and see that as a gift from God, not as a negative.
Yeah. I know I often hear, it seems like women are always like, come on, talk, open up. They want the man to open up, and you don't talk enough about your feelings, but like what you're saying. So it's like a conflicting thing of ideas. This man or multiple situations opened up and was looked at as weaker, but then they get involved in a relationship and the woman wants them to open up. So well,
see, it's how you do it. So if you just coming out at them, I would never approach a man like that. Well, you just don't talk enough. You don't say anything. You don't express your emotion. Okay, well, that's just gonna cause him to shut down. There are ways that you can engage with a man to get him to open up, and usually it's about talking about what he likes to talk about. So most of the time, women, when we're engaging with men, we talk to them like we're talking to our girlfriends. Right. You can't talk to a man like you're talking to your girlfriend. You have to be very linear, because men think in compartments. They're compartmentalized. So you got to get him on his compartment he's on. If he likes cars, talk about cars. If he likes LED, talk to him about Little Light Studios. Kind of focus on, engage him enough to know what it is he likes, and then target that. If you target that and you start talking about that and get him, he'll start talking. I do it all the time. Yeah. I did it with you. No, I'm just playing with you. But I could easily get a man to talk by just focusing on him and talking about what it is I know he likes, or what I know he will be interested in talking about. Get them to talk first, because that's what you want. You want them to talk. We don't need to be talking about emotions right now, because that's far right. They're not going to swing like that. But first, just get them to talk. Then when you get them to talk, then you start attaching emotional words to it. So it sounds like you really like that. Sounds like that made you feel good. Sounds like that's something you love. Now you start attaching words to what it is they're talking about. Then it's you slowly help them to swing over into right brain. You don't just, well, you're just not talking enough. You don't say what no, he's not your girlfriend. And that's another reason why women end up being like that scripture in Proverbs, that a nagging woman is like a dripping faucet. Oh, wow. They end up being like that because you're trying to force someone to talk, and that's not how they communicate. We need to learn to speak in their language. And if you learn to speak in their language, that's called being outward focused. If you learn to speak in their language and you're outward focused, then he will talk. But if you just expect him to just unravel the way that you unravel with your girlfriends when y'all all sitting around drinking tea, you're always going to get that conflict.
Man, this is great. This is like men are from Mars, women are from Venus.
That's exactly what it's like.
5 love languages.
Yes.
Since this is the awareness weekend of this thing, or month, what are some red flags that people should look for? I think one of the biggest things is just not knowing, because I've seen so many testimonies of people that said, I just had no idea that this person would do this. They seemed happy. Yep. You see them on social media, they're outgoing, but inside they're dealing with something that they're not letting the world know. How can you pick up on that if they're not expressing it? Is there any kind of signs?
Yeah, see, that's the thing. Like my own experience, none of us knew. My brother deleted himself, and this happened in 2014, and none of us knew that he was going through this.
How old was he?
He was 32.
Wow.
3 boys.
Wow.
And so I lived in another state, and he was in Texas. I was in Maryland. So it wasn't like I could be with him all the time. It wasn't like I could engage with him all the time. And so I didn't know until I got a call. So I got a call from my mother, and my mother said, your brother is talking about deleting himself. I need you to pray. Now, I had never had, believe it or not, I worked at that particular time. I was working in a psych ward overnight doing a lot of psych assessments. And so, but I didn't think he would do something like that. So when I got off the phone with her, I'm just like, he must be having a moment. This boy acting a fool. Right. That was all I thought. Right. But about maybe 10 minutes later, he sent a text out. And when he sent a text, see, going back in my story, when I worked in the psych ward, I had someone come in when I had just started. So this was me just getting my clinical license. I had someone come in the psych ward and I would do assessments overnight. And this boy came in and he said that he wanted to, supposedly he wanted to delete himself and he was going to jump in front of the train in DC. And so he presented so normally. So I just thought, well, I guess he was just having a moment. Nothing's wrong with him. He was like, no, I'm fine now. Don't worry. I'm just going to go back to school. Like, he gave me this whole story. And when I called, because before I would make a decision about what I was going to do with the client, because once you're there, if you're talking about deleting yourself, if you've had a moment, depending on what level you're at, they will make you stay. You can't just go home. It's called a 5150. So you got to stay. And we got to send you to a psych ward. But I didn't think that was the case because he had presented so normally to me. And so I called the psychiatrist because I had to call the psychiatrist to get their approval and tell them what I had done, the assessment, give them the breakdown. And she said, you can't just send him home. Wow. And I said, why? He's fine. She said, he just said he was going to go jump in front of a train. And you're talking about he's going to go home? He can't go home. I cried almost the whole night because I almost was about to send this boy home because of how he looked. But it was just such a, it etched in my mind that when someone, also he said he was going to jump in front of the train. And one of the other things he did is he reached out to all his family members and said a goodbye.
Oh, see.
But wow. See, this was one of my first psych assessments that I did in the ER, so I didn't know. Wow. And I had talked to my other colleague, and she said, this is why you could not send him home, because he reached out and, she gave all the classic signs. So that just kind of etched in my mind that how you relate to someone who's putting out signals. And about now going forward to my brother, about 10 minutes after I got that call from my mother, he sent a text to all of us. Okay. And that's how I knew.
You're reliving things now.
Right. So that's how I knew, oh, he's going to do this. He's serious. So what I did, being in Maryland, I called the county sheriff and I told them that they needed to get to his house as soon as possible because he's either actively going to do this right now or he's already done it. Right. So they went out and they got to his house, but he wasn't there. Oh. He had already left. Oh, so for 2 hours, we were on the edge of our seat trying to figure out where is he. Wow. And 2 hours later, they found him at the graveyard. Oh. He had shot himself.
Oh, that's terrible.
And so, and the thing about it was when he shot himself, he wasn't dead. He was still alive. And so then they were trying to figure out, is he going to be permanently disabled or is he going to die? And eventually, a couple days later, they pronounced him dead. See, in Texas, if you're considered brain dead, you're considered dead. Yeah. So he was considered brain dead.
I think that's an important point to bring up, and it's a sad thing to think about, but I'm glad you pointed that out because I've had friends that have deleted themselves, and people that actually are thinking about doing this act, they don't realize that the brain doesn't want to die. And so you think that this is going to be an on and off switch and you're going to be done with this life. That's not how it works. You're going to suffer for days sometimes. Yep. And I've had friends and friends of friends that have done the exact same thing you have. And I hate to say it and prolong what we're talking about here in that respect, but whether you're taking, like, for instance, men typically use Firearms. Yeah. I was trying to think
actually, that was the next statistic, 50%.
And women typically use pills. Yeah. And so they want to maintain their appearance. Men don't really care. They just want it out. Both of them are extremely painful, no matter what.
Especially if it doesn't work.
Right. Yeah.
Now, I couldn't have imagined if he would have not died. I'm thankful he did die once he decided to do that. Because if he wouldn't have died, he would have been permanently disabled his entire life. You know, I mean, and I'm not talking about just a permanent, I'm talking about seriously permanent. Right. Somebody he would probably been like a vegetable.
Yeah. Wow.
You know, so for his sake, I'm glad that the Lord allowed him to pass away, because once he decided to make that decision, it wouldn't have